Okay, Jeremy, it's me back again. So here's the last half. So we went through the wolves and the wolf pack and how we are all functions of the different wolves. And then there's a story about a young Native American Indian boy who's speaking to the chief of his tribe, and he says, "Chief, that wolf story is not to be confused with this one." He says, "Chief, what makes you call members of our tribe the things that you do?" And he says, "Well, boy, when I see snow falling softly and a child is born on that day, I call him Snow Falling Softly. And when I see a falcon flying west on that day and a child is born, I call them Falcon Flying West. But what makes you so interested? Two wolves humping." So what is the big problem? We spoke about this. I think I'm repeating myself here, but it's the mind. And particularly the mind is geared for one thing and one thing only, and that is survival. Now, of course, we're not living in those days of caves and bears and saber-toothed tigers, but the reality is that our survival instincts are still there and still highly alert. So the job of the mind is really specifically to seek safety, survival, and familiarity. It's never satisfied, so it wants more and wants better and wants different. It's constantly in judgment and comparison. It's in a perpetual state of fear of getting what we want and then we're not satisfied, or getting what we don't want and then we're not satisfied. As the Buddha said, life is suffering. We get what we want and we suffer. We get what we don't want and we suffer. I'm hoping that you can see me. Let's hope so. See me if you can. Okay, I'm gonna carry on because it's important for me to get the words out, even if it's just on the audio. So the monkey mind is known as the saboteur or the drunken tenant who lives rent-free in our heads, or indeed the chimpanzee, which was the one I showed you. And the monkey mind makes us do ridiculous things, end marriages, implode businesses. There was a story of a German investor who was he vied between being the wealthiest man in Germany and the second wealthiest, and he was knocked off the perch of being the wealthiest, and he threw him because of a hedge with VW and the emissions scandal, and he threw himself in front of a train. A thought, just a thought, like this young man who has a thought to jump into very cold water. So, first test, maybe, the water itself. It's easy to laugh at that kind of thing, but we've all done ridiculous things. I've thrown myself off a cliff to try and impress a young woman and nearly broke my neck when I was 19. So we need to give the other voice more airtime, this monkey mind that does its thing. You see, fear lies. Fear is perpetually assessing what's in front of us and giving what it believes to be the truth. Whereas courage in our heart, I believe, tells the truth. And then we can access this thing called mojo. So I'm now going to talk to you about a strategy or a plan or a prescription that can help you to navigate this very complicated and paradoxical experience of being human. So mojo, many will know from Austin Powers. Got my mojo, baby. So mojo is a fairly mystical concept. It comes originally from West Africa. It's a Fulani saying that says it refers to a magical piece of cloth. And then one thing led to another, and it became kind of more mainstream. It's a kind of interesting word, isn't it? So if we look at a definition of mojo, what I say is that it's about feeling great, being in the zone, having access to life force, being unstoppable, having confidence. Versus nojo or no joy, which we can all relate to. So mojo is when we're in our mojo, more joy, and when we're in our nojo, no joy. So here's the process. First of all, we need to identify what is the magic. So M is for magic. What do I want to do? What do I keep putting off? What is the one thing that's really calling me to do today? Something that would fill my heart with energy. It could be to call an old friend. It could be to buy a ticket somewhere. It could be to have a difficult conversation with one's partner. Easy. Or is it? Right? So there it is. There's the inspiration. You and I have countless times in a day where we think, oh, I'll just do that. Why don't I pick up my guitar? Why don't I call that client? And then what happens, you'll notice, is obstacles, or what I call opinions. And this is the monkey mind. I'll probably fail. Time or money. I tried it before and it didn't work. I failed before. There's no money, there's no marketplace. And so as quickly as that beautiful idea becomes completely disemboweled and disembodied by the monkey mind that finds all the reasons why we shouldn't do it before we've even taken the first step. So the next step then is to hold on to the magic and consider taking action. Because when we take action, things change. Until we take action, nothing changes. So the J is for jump. Whatever that is, put your shoes on, pick up the phone, start the conversation. See, we're looking for a tiny 1% victory. But the irony is that it's actually a 90% victory because getting started is the hardest part we need to do. And then finally, an ovation. We're not very kind to ourselves, are we? We're harsh, we're critical. And if we spoke to our friends and our loved ones the way we spoke to ourselves, how many would we have? So I think it's really important to show gratitude and appreciation for what we've done. So this is really, really important. I stepped out of my comfort zone. I took a risk. Take a bow. Now, what will you do? So let me tell you how I found my mojo. And I've got to tell you, it hasn't been easy. And it's why I call myself the naked speaker. So back in February last year, I was in a marriage. I've been in the relationship for 24 years. And I was fine. It was fine. And I'm going to be deliberately graphic here, Jeremy, because I'm still navigating what I share and what I don't share. But the reality was, I was 24 years in a marriage, which you may be familiar with the story or from your own experience, where before children and after children, and we started to do less, we had less intimacy, less sex, and it became just really a survival of day after day, night after night, of doing the same thing, of routine. Now, this is part of reality, but what do we do to fix this? And I came across a woman called Esther Perel, who many of you will know, and she's kind of a relationship expert. And she said that every relationship needs love on the one hand, which is about security, trust, and appreciation. And it also needs desire, which is almost the opposite of love. It's a frisson of energy, of passion. The Romans spoke about the god Eros. So that desire of something, whether it's not necessarily sexual, but it could be like a creative act or to do something amazing. And Eros is just there all the time. I hadn't seen her. I hadn't experienced the energy. I hadn't given myself permission to do that. And around that time, I got an invitation to a naked poetry event in Noordhoek in Cape Town. And I was kind of a little bit shocked by this, but also, as these two things very often go hand in hand, excitement and nervousness. I was nervous, but I was also really intrigued. And it said, come along, deliver some poetry, vulnerable, authentic, and do it naked. Eventually I went. I was a bit nervous, but and we got there and the person invited us to derobe. We eventually took off our clothes, and it was after the first few seconds, it became completely normal. And written this poem that just about love that just flooded out of me. And then one thing led to another. I went to a naked dinner party. Again, there wasn't any sex involved. There was just people being naked and I noticed a very different kind of conversation. Authentic, relaxed, easy, no problem. And then I took off to the Northern Cape on a solo road trip for 10 days. And I got to the Orange River on the border with Namibia late one night, and I woke up the next morning. I was the only person in the campsite. And I had a shower and I was putting my clothes back on, and I thought, why? Why? I could feel this beautiful, warm winter sun on my skin. The Orange River was out in front of me. And I went for a walk, a 10-kilometer walk up the Orange River, and didn't see a soul. I spent a few days there, and then I got in the car and I traveled and I built fires and I howled at the moon. And then on the way back down, I was coming out of Springbok, and I decided that I would take off my clothes again. Took off my clothes and I danced in a lay-by as this truck appeared out of nowhere and flashed its lights. It was such an invigorating experience. And all the while, the monkey mind saying, this is ridiculous. You're going to get arrested. You know, what are you doing? And then 5 kilometers later, I was pulled into a police roadblock. They told me to get out the car, put some clothes on, and they searched the car for a considerable amount of time. They obviously wanted to know, what is this dude doing? He's naked, he's on his own, what is happening? So they were looking for drugs, right? I sat and I waited. And whilst I was waiting, this young policeman came up to me and said, excuse me, sir, are you married? I said, yes, officer, I'm married. He said, are you happily married? I said, well, officer, let me ask you, are you married? He said, yes. I said, are you happily married? And he said, yeah, it's a good point. Eh? Anyway, eventually I was on my way and I found my way back to Cape Town. And then as these things happen, I had an implosion in my family. It was discovered that I was having a dalliance with another one. So for the last 9 months, I've been navigating this territory of a daughter who won't speak to me, an irate, upset wife. But the reality is that I am not regretful about this journey that I'm on, because I've discovered that living a naked life, in whatever way it is for you, is really the only way to live, in my experience. And what do I mean by the only way to live? You do what you need to do, you know, but what I would encourage you to do is be more naked of the heart, to express yourself, to deliver those communications, those difficult conversations, to make a stand for your authentic self. And then the physical naked part is I encourage you, as I've done with myself, to push my own boundaries. I've gone for naked runs in the forest, naked swims along the beach. Discreetly, I'm not like out and proud and telling everyone, but the experience of running naked and being naked has made a massive difference to my life. Like, if you think about all these, you know, these interventions we have and events that we go to, like, they're all clothed. Think about it for a moment. What would it be like if it was naked? If we did those naked? So we're doing this transformation. We're trying to do this work to develop ourselves, but all with these layers on. So this has been really quite a revelation for me. And I've discovered that I become far more authentic and real when I'm not clothed. Now, I know this is very odd for you. It was very odd for me, but I'm now living a life that is completely, mostly authentic, courageous, vulnerable, and I'm expressing and living myself. I'm not offending people, but people will get offended, and I'll deal with that. You know, that's what happens, right? So what have I learned in the process? I've learned, one, fear will always be there, and it's what we choose to do with it. Second, to stop waiting for when we're ready, because we're never ready. You know, that bus that came along, I could have said, I won't get on that bus because I'll wait until I'm ready. But the reality was, when we're ready, we open our mouths, and this, like I said before, this magical teleprompter appears in front of us. And thirdly, jump and the net appears. So Terence McKenna wrote a beautiful piece on courage, which I'll read. It's not showing up now, but nature loves courage. We take the leap and nature provides the net. It's what all the teachers and alchemical prophets have been saying, is that when we leap and we trust, a feather bed appears. That's a summary of it. So the top 5 regrets of the dying is based on a book, and I say regrets because there's an urban myth about this guy who gets a tattoo that says no regrets, and then he regrets it. So the top 5 regrets of the dying are based on a book written by a palliative care nurse called Bronnie Ware. And what she did was interview a whole ton of people who were dying. And what she came up with was the 5 top regrets of the dying. Number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not like the one that others expected of me. Second, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Thirdly, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Fourthly, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. And 5, I wish I'd let myself be a little happier. So let's test the Mojo model. How will your life end? What regrets of what you did do and you did want to have versus what were the ones that you wish you had? So this is the future that's waiting for us. Are we going to live a life of regrets of the things that we didn't do, or regrets of the things we did do, and therefore the huge benefits and opportunities of doing that? So I invite you to make a decision today. Now, on the note of decisions, I want to share a story with you about General Dwight D. Eisenhower. And the story goes, Jeremy, I'll tell the story of D-Day. It's a 5-minute story, and I'm just questioning myself whether I tell it so often, but I think it would be important to tell you. No, I think I've got to tell it. Okay, so the story, so go back. I would say, let me tell you a story about decisions and the power of decision making, because I'm going to invite you to make a decision after this talk today. So it's the 5th of June, 1945. In a country house north of Portsmouth in the south of England are 12 generals sitting around a table. They need to make a decision by 2:30, and there's only one man who can make the decision, and that's General Dwight D. Eisenhower. And the decision is, do we launch D-Day or not? There are 260,000 men waiting to launch the invasion across the English Channel to the waiting Germans on French soil. There are over 1 million support staff. In small villages and side roads in the south of England are tanks and armored vehicles and landing craft waiting for the decision. They have to make it by 2:30 because of the weather in the English Channel is notoriously erratic. There's a narrow band of high pressure that's predicted, and the tide is very low. At 2:28, Eisenhower says, "Gentlemen, we go." And then everyone scrambles. They launch the invasion, 2:00 in the morning, and it goes according to plan, pretty much. They come across, nothing ever really goes according to plan, but they come up against very, very heavily armed German defenses, and they really are in for some major resistance. Now, 2 key things that happened. One was that Erwin Rommel, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who was a brilliant strategist, was on holiday in Bavaria, attending the birthday of his 18-year-old daughter, and Hitler had given express orders not to be woken until 10 a.m. The invasion was launched at 2 a.m. and one thing led to another. Now, eventually, when the Nazi regime fell and Eisenhower became president once and president twice, at the end of his second term in office, he was asked by his biographer, "Tell me about that decision. How did you know it was the right decision?" And he said, "I didn't." When you make a decision, you need to make the decision, and you need to make the decision right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's missing these days, is where so many options, most of us are just scared to make a decision. Will we offend people? What happens if we make the wrong one? There's so much of the drunken monkey that gets interwoven and interrupts that thinking. So something perhaps you've always wanted to do, something you really want to do now. What is the decision that you're about to make? Are you going to make the decision? Remember, not making a decision is also making a decision. Ladies and gentlemen, know that our time is very valuable. We do not have any more guaranteed than this moment right here. So I invite you to follow the Mojo process, and let's do it now. There's a prize at stake. So what I'm going to ask someone to do is to come up and sing a song. So, or tell a story. So there's a prize and an incentive. So what are you going to do? And then I will invite people up. So let's take you through it. So M is for magic. What's the magic that you really want to do? Now, what are the obstacles in your mind? What will people think? Let's say sing a song. I want to sing an Aretha Franklin song. And then the monkey mind chips in with, I haven't sung it for ages. I'm not a very good singer. Other people, I'll be judged. All that stuff, right? And then the J is to jump. Are you going to do it? Great, let's do it. They sing the song, and then they get what will be a very profound standing ovation, because it's not about the result. It's about participating in the result. So I've got some options for you around coaching, and I'll pitch ideas to them about what they can do. And then finally, in summary. So I want you to take away from this the acronym MOJO. You will be presented in the next 5 minutes with a great idea. And then you'll notice that monkey mind will chip in with all its opinions. Are you going to do something or are you not? Don't beat yourself up if you don't, but just know that that magic is really a direct line, I believe, with source, energy, God, universe, whatever your choice of language is. So I wish you well. You can follow me at thenakedspeaker.com.